Hey everybody, Pastor Coley here in my own kitchen to show you how to make my easy, crusty bread recipe. I make this every year with the First Communion kids and I love it because it's easy. There's only 4 ingredients and you don't have to knead it. A lot of bread needs to be kneaded for it to be the right consistency in the end, and this one you don't need. So it's just 4 ingredients: flour, water, salt, and yeast. And what you need to bake it in is, I use a Dutch oven, which is like this with a lid. If you have a Dutch oven but without a lid, you can cover it in foil. If you don't have a Dutch oven like this, you can cook it in an oven-safe pot or like a crock pot if it's safe to put in the oven. The idea is that you need something big enough to get the bread and a little bit of space, but then put the lid on top and it'll trap all the water and the steam from the bread inside the Dutch oven while it's baking, which is much closer to the way that a real baker's oven or a professional oven is. Much hotter and steamier inside the oven than just a regular oven that we have at home. So that's why it works better. So you need 3 cups of flour, which I've already got here, a teaspoon of salt, a teaspoon of yeast, and then you stir those together a little bit and then add in a 1.5 cups of warm water and just stir it all together until it gets good and mixed up. All right, so once you get it all stirred up, it'll look something like this. It's not exactly pretty. It's a lot stickier and wetter than a regular bread recipe, but that's good. That's how you want it. So you just leave it mixed up and stuck in the bowl like this. Cover it with some saran wrap. So you cover it with the wrap and then let it sit at least 10 or so hours. 10 or 12 is what I normally do overnight. If you start it at night, you can bake it in the morning, or start it in the morning and bake it that evening. But let it sit for a while, up to 24 hours, and I will show you what it looks like then. All right, I'm back. It is 11 or 12 hours later. My dough has been sitting here rising. It looks like this now. Hopefully you can see that. It's puffed up to fill the bowl quite a bit and has some bubbly bits on the top. Looks kind of like pancakes when they've cooked and they're ready to flip. The top's all bubbly. So you put some flour down on your table or counter. Make sure to clean it real well, of course, and then pour the dough out. It'll be pretty wet and sticky still. So you just kind of scrape around the outside of the bowl like this until it plops out onto the counter. And then you move it around on the flour just so it gets the outside kind of coated. Again, you don't really need to knead this dough or anything, but coat the outside with the flour on the counter a little bit so it's less sticky. And then you flip it around and kind of turn the edges underneath. Hopefully you can see that. Turn the edges underneath so it makes a nice round ball. You're trying to get surface tension across the top by tucking the undersides in. So now it just sits on the counter like that for about half an hour. Get your oven started preheating to 450 degrees, and it's important for it to heat up for that whole half an hour. You want to put your Dutch oven or crock pot or whatever dish you're cooking in, put it in the oven before it's preheated and let that preheat too. So let the oven sit there for half an hour to make sure that it and everything inside gets up to heat, and then I'll show you what to do next. All right, so the oven has preheated and the dough rested for a half an hour. So now you gotta get the dough in the pot and the lid on top of the pot. So this is a little bit of a tricky part because you wanna try to get the dough into the pot in the same orientation that it's sitting on the counter, so that the top part is still up on top and what's bottom on the counter is still bottom. So get that in and put the lid on and then bake it in the oven. Let's see how we do. We're gonna bake it for 30 or 40 minutes with the lid on, and then peek under the lid, and if it's cooked enough, then you take the lid off and cook it for another 15 minutes or so with the lid off. But so I'll come back here in a half an hour and show you what it looks like and let you know if it's ready for the lid to come off or not. All right, now I'm going to open it up and see what it looks like. Again, you have to be real careful when you take the lid off because the whole point is that it traps that steam there in the pot and helps the bread bake. So be very careful when you take off the lid of whatever pot you are using to cook. Let's see what it looks like. Here is my bread. You can see it started to get crusty, but it's not dark enough yet, so took the lid off. The lid is up here on top of the stove, and we will cook without the lid for another 15 minutes or so and see what it looks like. All right, time to take it out. Here is my bread. A little bit brown on the top, which is how you want it to be. A little darker, but not burned. And you let it cool for a while and then cut it open and it'll be crusty and delicious.